This is Evan Graver, your host for Plot Recon, where thrillers get tactical. My guest today is Nick Sullivan, author of the Deep series, a set of dive thrillers set in the Caribbean. Nick's also a seasoned actor with credits in Boardwalk Empire, The Good Wife, and more. He's an award-winning audiobook narrator, having voiced hundreds of titles, and the founder of TropicalAuthors.com, a crew of writers bringing high-stakes stories to sun-soaked settings. If you like your thrillers laced with salt air and gunpowder, you're in the right place. Nick, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a good intro. Thank you.
Yeah, always helps to have do a little background, and Chat GTP is wonderful for helping to write stuff. So
when it doesn't lose its mind.
That's yeah. So I'm gonna jump right into it. I got about 20 questions for you. It depends upon what we start talking about and where we go. So
sure.
The first one is you've been in front of the mic and the camera for years. What pushed you to finally write your own thrillers?
Well, I suppose it was narrating books for so many years. I'd been an avid reader before I started recording audiobooks. And the more I read, the more I would come across books that I'm going to steal something from Stephen King's On Writing. He had said, that good books can inspire you to write, but bad books can inspire you to write too. So after I'd narrated a few New York Times bestsellers that I thought were not tip-top, I thought, well, maybe I should take a shot at this. And I had a screenplay that had been kicking around called Zombie Bigfoot, which is exactly what it sounds like. And I had been narrating for Wayne Stennett, and he was going the self-publishing route and was doing a lot better than some published authors I knew. So I thought, well, why wait? Let me just go ahead and novelize this, and then I can have a lot of fun narrating it. And I did that, and it was such a blast. I started writing the sequel, Zombie Billionaire, and then about 15,000 words into that, I had the idea for Deep Shadow, which has become the Deep series. And the zombie books kind of got locked in the closet, and I tossed the key away for quite a while. And I took off with the Deep series. But yeah, I mean, it came from narrating so many different books over so many years.
Very cool. So you covered the question of when you said, screw it, I need to write this myself. So, so in all this narrating and reading, what's one book or film that shaped how you think about storytelling?
Boy, I would say I'm not going to feel too bad about dodging that somewhat and saying there are many books and many films that inspired me. But when I'm asked about inspirations, I think one thing I really took away, I narrated one book for Carl Hiaasen way back in the day. It has since been re-narrated by someone else because when I did it on reel-to-reel, and most of those old reel-to-reel ones have been redone digital. But it was Sick Puppy, and I loved that book so much I went out and got all of his books just to read on my own time. And I think I've taken a lot of inspiration from Hyacint's tendency to swing for the fences with the bad guys. There is just no cookie cutter bad guy. Yeah. They're all interesting. They all have their quirks. And I try to get the reader to realize, oh no, I've been rooting for the bad guy for a little while here. I think that just makes it more interesting when they come up against your goodies.
Yeah, that bad guys are the best foils for our protagonist. So, in saying that, how do you, in the Deep series, how do you capture the atmosphere of the dive site or the island without slowing down the plot?
Yeah, that's tricky because my books, if for viewers tuning in, they're basically action adventure thrillers set in the Caribbean with two nomadic characters heading off the series. So each book is set in a different island. And what I strive to do is sort of sneak a little travelogue of each island into the book. But what I don't want to do is hit viewers or listeners or readers, depending on how you're approaching it, with a giant info dump. So you have to find ways to spread it out. You don't really want huge amounts of information about the island coming in, 200 pages into the book, but I also don't want them all happening in the first chapter. So usually I lay out a list of important things about the island and the culture and the food and the history, and I try to find ways to sprinkle it in. And since the main characters are dive masters, I get to cheat a little bit. And when Boone and Emily are talking to people that they're taking out for dive trips, they can talk a bit about the background and give some of that information. I've found as a reader, I like when exposition is delivered in dialogue rather than just paragraphs of information. So letting Emily, who is a bonkers character, be the one to deliver some background about some plantation or what have you, I think is just far more interesting because it lets me throw her character on top of it and get some humor out of the exposition.
So, when you sit down to write these things, are you plotting it out? Are you pantsing it? Just kind of winging it as you go, or
if I'm forced to pigeonhole myself, I would say I am a plotter. I do tend to know how the book is going to start, and I know how I want it to end. And often I have signposts along the way. For some books, I will plot out chapter by chapter, and for other books, I'll plot out what needs to happen, but I won't necessarily know how I'm going to get from A to B to C to D. But I'm not one of those people that goes from, like, I know what A is and I know what Z is, and the rest, who knows? I do want certain points in there. So I've got my peaks and valleys in the right spots. I sort of do books in a 3-act structure, the way a lot of films are, although some book, like Zombie Billionaire I just did, Brought Back from the Dead, that was a 5-act structure. It had to be because of all the different storylines. So yeah, I find myself pantsing a little more than I used to. I'll be like, I'm not sure how to get here, so let's just see what happens. And usually whatever I plotted out on day one is not what I end up with. Almost always it changes quite a bit.
do you find that your characters talk to you and tell you what they want to do more than trying to shove them into that plot?
Yeah. Boone is, I and Boone share many aspects of our personalities. Emily, I have no control over. I really do. I'm not just making it up. She surprises me all the time. I sort of might have an idea of what I want her to do in a scene, and then the pantsing kicks in, and she just does crazy stuff, which is delightful. I think it keeps it a lot fresher. I'll tell your listeners this. When I started this series, Emily was just arm candy. She was going to be the girl that Boone was with on the first island. And I had sort of planned to have a different person on each island. But at some point, Emily was just like, screw that. And she became, I think, more popular than Boone. And it's sort of become a Abbott and Costello, a straight man and comedic gal. and they play off each other so well. So I just can't imagine it without them. But that was not my original intent when I started. I think, in fact, just to prove to people that I'm not making this up, if you go and you look at the description on Amazon for Deep Shadow, I've kept it this way. I haven't changed it. There is no mention of Emily in that, because there wasn't when I started.
So, do you also find that other characters keep reoccurring? Like I have a character named Scott Gregory who showed up in book 6, and he just decided he was going to hang around. Do you have characters like that?
Yes, not because each island is a whole different island. It's a little more difficult for that to happen. But I do have actually this new book I'm working on now, which is the sequel to Deep Hex. A character from Deep Devil is coming back. Oh, and I had some bad guys in Deep Hex. Tolstoy and Potluck were their code names that were so fun that in the following book, which was set in Grand Cayman, that is where they had escaped to. I thought, well, I got to bring these two back. So Tolstoy and Potluck were in 2 subsequent books. And I've got these 2 Navy men, the Clawsons, who are based on some Mennonite cousins of mine, who will probably come back. And I have a certain character who's survived a jaguar attack in Deep Roots, who I said where he escaped to, so he may show up again. And I've had several readers request Ana Munoz, who is the current leader of the Cartel de los Soles. They want her to come back. When I set a book in Trinidad, I'll probably bring her back because she's in Venezuela, and there's a lot of strife between Trinidad and Venezuela and the shipping areas. So yes and no. I don't think I have it as much as some folks, but I've got the dogs come back a lot.
You got to have the dogs come back.
Oh, yeah.
So how much of this do you take from headlines? How much of it's made up? Do you go out and find news articles and pull stories from that?
I usually don't go hunting for them, but when I hear something, it goes in a folder. The original idea for Deep Shadow, I had thought a long time ago. I thought about writing a book where Greenpeace gets their hands on a surplus Soviet Kilo submarine and goes after whaling fleets with a submarine. So I'd sort of had that idea in my head. And then I had seen some stories about narco subs.
Mm-hmm.
And when I spotted a few that were quite sophisticated looking, they hadn't gone to sea, they were captured in the jungle. I at that point, the Greenpeace with the Kilo sub became, wait a minute, what if terrorists took over one of these narco subs? Because some of them seemed pretty sophisticated, and that was based. The nature of that sub was based entirely on one that I had found, and I didn't make up the suggestion that some of these subs were built by out-of-work Soviet engineers, because a lot of the aspects of these bigger, sophisticated subs seem to match some of the North Korean and Iranian mini subs, which were built with some Soviet engineered technology. So all of that came from the real, but the idea of the terrorists taking over one of those subs, that actually was sort of a twist of something else I'd had. And then in Deep Hex, the Havana Syndrome I had been planning to do something with, and microwave weapons were something I had been researching. So all of that also came from the Havana Syndrome, which I'd heard on the news. Yeah. But I didn't get around to really using it till maybe 3 years after I had written notes about it.
So which book in your series did you have the most trouble writing?
I would say trouble's not really the right word, but
Yeah.
difficulty would be Boone. I did a prequel called Boone, uh, and I imagine if you ask me this question a few years from now, the answer will be Emily, because it's going to be even harder.
Yeah.
But Boone, when you write a long series, you get bits of backstory that come up, and a lot of time those bits of backstory are not something you had planned. It's just something you come up with, and then you don't remember what you said. So I had to go reread my whole series and grab any reference to something in the past and then try to put them in order. Some things didn't quite gel correctly, and then trying to figure out how I get Boone from the age of 11 till where he meets Emily, and spreading that out. It was a difficult book to write, but I had a lot of fun. But Emily's going to be much harder. Boone's background is somewhat tied to some of the things I did, whereas, despite my appearances, I am not a 4'11" young British female, so I have no concept of the British schooling system. People talk about, I did well with my A levels. I'm like, I don't know what any of this means.
Yeah.
So for me to do her backstory, I'm probably going to have to lean heavily on some Brit. I thought about talking to Brit Nicholas Harvey, who
Yeah.
writes books in my genre, but he's lived in the U.S. so long. A lot of times I'll ask him questions and he won't know. So I'll probably need to get a current Brit.
That's tough to do the research like that. Um, so what is your research process like? Are you just you go out and talk to people? Do you do a lot of internet research?
Yeah, it's a combination of things. When possible, I will go to the island. The one I have coming up, I'm looking into it, but it may be difficult. It's the one that Hurricane Beryl flattened, Carriacou. But I have a dive master there who is currently the only dive op still operating on island. And I've been asking him a lot of questions, and he's been fantastic. But if possible, I go to the island. I'll often find the friendliest cab driver I can find who's a local, and basically pay them to take me to stuff and show me things that are not necessarily the main touristy things. I'll go on all of the popular dives and try to fit some of those in to the storyline. I love food, so I will almost always have some kind of a restaurant or food scene where I usually put some exposition. If it happens later in the book, it might be where Boone and Emily figure something out. But all of that research, I do a lot of it up front, and I organize it as to how it might be used. And a lot of times I will try to tie it into the storyline, the plot itself. I'll do the research before I necessarily know what the central thrust of the plot's going to be. For instance, on Saba, the big thing about Saba is it's a mountain in the middle of the ocean, just with very little beach. So I knew that the mountain had to figure into it, and I knew it was a volcano, not extinct. I'm blanking on the word.
Dormant.
Dormant. Thank you. It's a dormant volcano. A lot of the islands in the Caribbean are dormant volcanoes. So from that, I had the idea of, okay, I know what this main threat's going to be, and it's going to tie into the fact that it's a dormant volcano. Let's see. Yeah. So then once I've got all of that research done, I then try to, as I said before, you don't want to do an info dump. You dribble out some of that research and tie it in. But a lot of the characters too will be designed based on aspects of that island. In Belize, I had a Rastafarian character because on Key Cocker and Ambergris Key, there's quite a few Rastafarians there. although I probably should have had Garifuna because that's a bigger group. But I know some Rastafarians. I don't know any Garifuna, and I went with something I knew.
So, in all the traveling and diving, what's the most intense or dangerous dive that you've done, and did it make it into the book?
Um, it's funny. The most dangerous one didn't seem dangerous in the moment, and then the most intense one I remember. Okay, so when we were in Cozumel, one of my dive buddies ran out of air at one of the southern sites, and we were down pretty far, and the current was ripping, and he had not tucked into the coral, so he'd been just kicking away, trying to maintain. And he signaled me out of air, and we were just like, okay, go, and went up. So that was probably the most dangerous one, but everything went by the book, so it just didn't really strike me as anything. But I do remember diving off Key Calker after a storm had passed by the day before, and we probably shouldn't have gone out. And that is the first time I thought, oh my, I just about died there. Where I had gone in and I popped up to give my okay and saw the boat, the underside of the boat was out of the water and coming down. It was picked up. And so I absolutely purged and hurt my ears a bit, but I went down as fast as I could, heard it smack the water above me. But no, I don't think either of those have come into it. I don't know why. Maybe they should. Well, running out of air, I'm sure. I actually don't know right now. I don't recollect. Yes, I do. I do remember somebody was in distress, and I wasn't nearby, but I watched the dive master deal with them, and I think I put that in.
Yeah, it's a pretty common thing is running out of air when you're underwater in those situations. A lot of novice divers and unfamiliar dive sites.
Yeah, well, and that's my buddy was by no means novice. It just shows you
Yeah.
it doesn't take much to stop paying attention, and
Yeah.
yeah.
You get to looking at those critters and the coral and then not looking at the air gauge. So you've narrated hundreds of books. When you sit down to write, do you hear the voices in your head like a narrator, or do you think in visuals like a screen actor?
Oh, that's a good. Well, sort of both. The narration I've been doing, it's about 600 titles plus now, and it's become somewhat second nature. So I don't know how much I actually think about it anymore. It just sort of happens. But when I write the books, I'm definitely thinking of it in terms of a movie and where the camera is. In fact, I'll catch myself and have to cut out a few. Boone turned to so and so. He turned to I put in almost too much camera angles sometimes, but I try to make it as cinematic as possible. And I'm sure that comes from not the audiobooks, but from working in screen.
So, being the narrator of the books that you've written, does that make you a harsher editor of your own writing?
Yes, this will probably be repeated by some folks, but generally, the way most of us do this is you finish your first draft, you do your own harsh second pass, and you clean it up. Then it goes on to some beta readers to spot the things that you don't know. I have a lot of specialists who will tell me I have no idea what radar really does, and that, and then you get it back, you make those changes, then it goes to your editor. Your editor goes over it, you make more changes, then it goes to your proofer. I have two proofers because I can't stand typos, and I play them off on each other. I see who's going to do better. I give them to them at the same time, and I count how many they caught. Then, when I get it back, I narrate it. When I narrate the book, I catch more typos that everyone missed, but also I make a lot of changes. When I hear something out loud, I'll be like, oh, that is a clunky sentence, and I'll adjust it. So I actually, during the narration process, I probably will make 2 or 3 pages of changes.
Okay.
And then when I edit my narration, a lot of books will go out to a third party for the audio narration, but I do it myself. I play myself at chipmunk speed so I don't get too caught up in the performance, and I listen. And sometimes I will make even more changes. So yeah, I don't like to hear bad stuff coming out of my mouth that came out of my keyboard. So I'll make quite a few tweaks as I come to the end to the finish line.
So, when a writer sends a book to you to be narrated, what is something that they totally miss when it comes to pacing a scene or narration or tweaks that need to be made?
Well, there's a wide variety of skill levels when you get books. Most books I get are pretty darn good, I got to say. Sometimes folks will put in too many dialogue tags, too many blah, 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 he said. Oh, really? She said? Yeah, 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 he said. It just becomes unnecessary. As soon as you establish who the characters are, if nobody else walks into the room, there's just no reason for...
Right.
Unless, if it's back and forth over an entire page, then yeah, you should put in something. Although the better books tend to not have a he said. It'll be just like Boone scratched his head and then Boone says a line. So you have some actions. So I have seen sometimes dialogue tags are overdone. And other times, and this is more an audiobook narrator quibble, characters will show up and it'll say either their name or what their job is, but nothing. So I don't know where they're from. I don't know if it's a big guy with a thick neck, he's going to probably sound different than a mousy little guy with spectacles, So sometimes I find characters are not fleshed out fully, and it doesn't have to be much, just something.
Okay.
I guess, yeah, I don't know. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, I mean, so if a writer sends you a book and it has that, where the character isn't fleshed out, do you ask them to flesh it out?
Oh yeah, no, I don't ask them to flesh it out, but I'll kind of imply it might need to be fleshed out by saying, hey, this person, you've got two cops here, and they have quite a few lines, and is one older than the other? Is one, I'll kind of nudge them for additional information, and sometimes they'll actually, tweak the writing a bit. It sort of depends on where it is. Sometimes I'll get books that they're already on their way to the printers. But in other cases, like if you're doing it through ACX and you're going for simultaneous release, the opportunity is there. And I can be useful. I have told authors, hey, a Glock doesn't actually have what we would consider a safety on it. Little things like that, and then they can make an adjustment before it goes out.
Well, it's nice to have that kind of feedback from somebody who's been doing it for a while. So
I hope so. But on the other hand, you don't want to. It's tricky.
Yeah.
If I see something that I think is just bad, I just don't say anything. But if there's a inconsistency and something just doesn't make sense, or one writing note I'll give is repeated words, a distinctive word being repeated in this sentence and then right here again in this sentence, because that's something that happens to me. And I hear it when I narrate my own books, but it's not something the editors tend to catch. Sometimes they do.
Yeah.
So that's something I'll tell the author, and often when I'm getting the corrections back, they'll ask me to change it to this.
So we're going to move on to tropical authors.
Yeah.
What was your goal, and how has the community evolved?
Well, it started out with just 12 of us, and I am self-published, and the only way self-publishing works is if you market.
Right.
And what you have to do to market just seems to change all the time. And at the time, the thing that was working quite well were promo sites where you would drop your book to 99 cents and then you would get on these newsletters that would go out and people would buy it. So it occurred to me that I tend to like to read this and this and this, and they're somewhat like if you're into Jason Bourne, you might not necessarily be into Clive Cussler or Carl Hiaasen. They're even though they might be a thriller, there are things that are different about them. So I thought, well, my books are tropical, and I know a lot of other people that books are tropical. At the time, I was narrating for Wayne. I had read Dawn Lee McKenna's books, which are marvelous, and they were set in the coast. So I thought, well, why don't we have our own promo site? And then that way, readers of author A, once they've finished the latest of author A and might have months to wait for another book, they could go on to read B, C, and D. And author B's people could read author A's people. And it became a cross-pollination tactic. And it took off so quickly and so well that we just kept going. I think we have 52 right now. We've slowed down a bit because it's entirely a volunteer basis. We don't charge anyone to be a part of Tropical Authors. We have some requirements. One of the things that sometimes gives people difficulty is book one in series has to have 100 reviews. And the reason we do that is if you don't have 100 reviews, then chances are you're not marketing properly. And we want, if somebody joins, we want that new somebody to help out everybody else. Mm-hmm. And often someone that we think is going to be good, we'll try to give them suggestions about what they can do to get their marketing up to snuff, and then we can bring them in. But the idea was just to have a way of getting readers jumping across like authors, like similar authors. And now if you go to Amazon and you look at our also bots, if you look at one of our books, you'll see a lot of other tropical authors in the also bots. So it definitely works. And it's fun, like what we're doing right here. Everybody's sort of, we're just a bunch of buddies and we get together. There's a thing called Novelists Incorporated, or NINC, and there's a NINC conference down in Florida. I'm not going to be doing it this year, but I've done it the last two, and a bunch of authors get together there. It's just sort of, and I met you, I believe, at Wayne Stennett's birthday party, along with Cap Daniels, and it's cool. Writing can be a very solitary business, so it's good to be able to get together with other folks and compare notes about what works for promotions.
Absolutely. So, you guys, speaking of promotions, you guys, a bunch of the tropical authors collaborated on the Graceless series. How did you guys keep it cohesive, and what are you doing with those books? I know you guys are using them for some Facebook ads to help grow the list. Talk about that a little bit.
Sure. So originally we were just going to do one, just Graceless. But then Britt, Nick, and I were talking, and we were like, we could just stick less on the on the end of a bunch of other. We started calling it the Less Is More series. So right now there's Graceless, Timeless, Shameless, Priceless, and Faceless. And I think we're done because that took a long time. Keeping it cohesive, it was difficult. We had to get together and kind of plot things out a little. We had quite a few pantsers involved, and pantsing just doesn't really work with that. So we had to sort of figure out where to go. And the whole idea of the series is you have a a central everyman or every woman who is not a part of our books lead off, and the journey, the adventure they're on, takes them through situations where characters from our series will come in and assist. And it's done, each author has a section. We decided to try to go back and forth, and back and forth was going to be a little difficult. So each person gets a chunk, and we just march it through. I think some of them we ended where everybody was sort of involved all at once. Yeah, actually, I think Faceless we kind of had to go back and forth. And then everybody is allowed to veto stuff about their own characters. People know my series. Boone is a very laconic, stoic person. He never says 3 words where one will do. And one of the authors had him Boone was talking on at length. So, I have to jump in and be like, no, he drop that down to 10 words. He wouldn't say all that. So what we do with it, well, initially what we wanted to do was we wanted to get on the USA Today bestseller list before it went away and then came back as a shadow of its former self. And we figured by having 4 of us hitting up all of our readerships on each book that we'd be able to do it. And we actually were able to get USA Today bestseller on Timeless. But now what we do with it, I narrated most of the audiobooks. One of them, Becker, used his narrator, so he gets the royalties from that audio. But I use the audiobook sales to pay for the website and the newsletter. And then the ebook sales, Wayne Stennett puts it through Dowling Island Press. Eventually, Tropical Authors is going to own all of it. I just haven't gotten around to LLCing it or anything. But we use those to pay for Facebook ads to bring in new readers and new subscribers. So we have Graceless for free. If you want to grab Graceless, all you got to do is sign up for Tropical Authors. And because each Tropical Authors newsletter, which is twice a month, has a lot of freebies or dollar books in there, people that were enticed by getting Graceless for free have an opportunity to get some free books every month, twice a month. So if you're watching this, go to tropicalauthors.com and sign up for deals and specials.
You nailed it. I was just going to say that. So, you talked about bringing authors in, and they had to have a certain amount of advertising or reviews. What do you do to encourage them to get more reviews or increase their advertising?
Well, let me back up. The things that we require are 2 books in genre. So we don't want someone that's got like a spy series where, the books are set in Prague and Moscow and, but I have this one in Fiji and then I'm back to London and that's not a tropical author. So we have to, you got to sort of, you got to be in your wheelhouse. You have to have 100 reviews on the first book and they have to be like, I think 4.2, I'm not sure, because we want good books.
Yeah.
And then they have to be edited if you got a lot of typos, if you have a homemade cover that it looks like your neighbor did for you, that's not going to fly. But if it's someone that we know is good and needs a little help, I will send them a list of promo sites. Promos are not quite as effective as they used to be, but I still think if you've never done it, then it's going to get you some reviews. I have helped people with Amazon ads a little bit. I don't like to get into that because they're hard enough for me to do. But if somebody I think should be doing better than they are, I will, or I'll say, hey, Britt, can you help them out with Facebook ads? So we've done that a few times. But again, it's a volunteer organization, and we only have so much bandwidth. We now have 3 authors that do the newsletters. It used to be just Britt, Nick, and I were the only ones that did it. But now we've got 3. And I think we're going to, Don Rich, who sets his books out on the Outer Banks, he's sort of our backbench, and we're going to hopefully bring him in, and we'll have 4, which will really split it up.
He's the next person on the podcast. So.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
All right. I love Don. He's the best. Let's see. Right. So I guess, we try to help.
Yeah. So, in your opinion, who's a tropical author you think that readers should know about right now?
Oh, that.
I know it's tough to pick one because we're on.
And whoever I pick means there's 50 I didn't pick.
Yeah.
I tell you what. Just because he hasn't written one in a while. I was pleasantly surprised by Hep Aldridge. Hep Aldridge. He's got, I think, 3 books, and they, like if you're a John Cunningham fan, I think you'd like them, or even a Becker fan. They're treasure hunting and archaeology, and a little bit different than some of ours. So I feel like if I pick him, that's a good one, because he's kind of got his own little niche there.
Okay. Yeah. So, man, we covered a lot of my questions already. So.
Oh no.
You just answered a lot of them while we've been talking. So it's great. I appreciate you being open and honest with the listeners and the readers. And so when you sit down to write a book, I think we talked about this a little bit. Where you start with outline, or you write by instinct, or does it strike like lightning and you just got to get it out, or you sit down and write the whole plot out?
Well, again, I do the research.
Yeah.
I come up with things about the island that I think are important for people to know, or that people that have been to those islands will go, oh, I remember that. Oh, yes. And then usually by looking at that, I can say, okay, Belize has all these Mayan ruins, so in my Deep Roots book, there's got to be something to do with some Mayan artifacts. It might come from that, or this volcano with a hurricane coming in Saba. It's got to involve somebody being on the top of that mountain and the hurricane. So once I have the research inform me where I think the plot's going to go, then I usually jump right to the climax. I'm like, what is something that will make your brain explode reading this book? What is something, and I will set that up. And that might change. A lot of times it'll change, but I need somewhere to go. Then I usually think about how Boone and Emily are going to find their way from A to B and get there. And then I usually start plotting at that point. And I have kind of 2 ways that I do it. One way would be a cold open, where someone that has nothing to do with Boone and Emily something occurs in that first scene, before I then shift to Boone and Emily. And then the other times, of course, I start with Boone and Emily. And then I start filling in. I'll plot it out. Sometimes I'll go chapter by chapter. Other times I won't. And then I guess that's where the plotting kind of becomes a little bit more like pantsing, as I pants from, well, here's a military term with waypoint to waypoint. I pants between the waypoints.
So when you're not in the middle of pantsing and you're out diving and traveling and narrating and acting, how do you keep your writing routine from falling apart?
I don't. People are like, where's the next deep book? Yeah, I write 1 book a year. I'd love to write more. It's just like today I have an audition for a film, and the character is sort of a conspiracy theorist, and the amount of text is enormous. So I've got to set up. Here's something interesting. After COVID, most of the auditions are now self-tapes, which I actually love because I've always lived in New Jersey, and I would have to haul my butt into New York just to stand in front of somebody and read my lines for 5 minutes and then go back to Jersey. So now I do it myself, but it still kind of takes the whole day. So I was looking forward to writing today. I am now auditioning today, and that's pretty much what I'll be focused on. And yesterday I was narrating a book, and Wayne Stennett should be getting me his final proofed manuscript today or tomorrow. So then I'll be narrating that. That's the thing. I should be writing every day, but Wayne, the earlier he gets his book, the earlier he can put in anything I spot, the earlier he can set up a pre-order. So being an author now, I realize how important it is for me not to drag my feet when I get an audiobook from somebody. So all of this sort of pushes the book, the writing further and further. Usually once I get going, though, other stuff starts to drop to the wayside, and I'll even start turning down work. But until I always think of those old mowers where you're just yanking the cord over and over. I feel like I have a lot of cord yanks before the writing gets rolling.
So, with all those cord yanks in there, what's one of the things that readers assume is glamorous about writing thrillers that totally is not?
I mean, there's nothing glamorous about writing thrillers. I don't know. That's tough.
I mean, I find it's just a solitary pursuit. You're sitting in front of the keyboard. It's not really glamorous.
No.
It's all the research. It's a lot of thinking and plotting and I tell people it's like an iceberg. You know, writing the story is the easy part probably, and then everything else that happens is underwater and nobody sees what the advertising and the editing, the advertising, all the stuff that happens.
Yeah, I mean it's a lot of work. I guess I have tried to make the writing a little more enjoyable by my writing room. I have this nice bay window with a view of the lake, and when the weather's good, I go outside. I just bought new curtains for my pergola. The reason for that is when the heat of the day goes down a little bit later as the sun moves down, I like to go out there, but the sun certain times a year just comes straight into my face. So now I've got these curtains that I can move wherever the sun is. I can block it and I can do more outdoor work. So that's one effort to make it a little more enjoyable. But otherwise, you're right. I mean, you're just staring at a screen for hour after hour.
Yeah.
Stephen King, if I can go back to him, in his On Writing book. That's a great book, by the way. If you're interested in writing, get on writing. You don't have to like Stephen King at all. It has nothing to do with that. It's not horror. It's just the process. But he's all about put your desk in a corner with a view of a white wall. And I just can't do that. But I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
Sometimes when I'm stuck, I'll come into here. I mean, this is just my recording booth. If I feel like I'm getting too distracted by watching the giant heron go after frogs, then I will leave that room and I'll come in here and try to focus.
Favorite dive spot, either for beauty or pure adrenaline?
The dive site I remember the most was on a trip to the Blue Hole in Belize, and it's not the Blue Hole. The Blue Hole is so far from Key Calker and Ambergris Key that you're going to do other dives there. So you do the Blue Hole, and then if I remember correctly, it's a little different. Normally, you do 2 morning dives, then you take a surface interval. Well, you take a surface interval between each dive, but you take a longer surface interval, then you do an afternoon dive. So what they do there is you do the blue hole, which is super deep, but and then you have lunch on this cool little island called Half Moon, and there's 2 other dives involved, and one of those dives involved a swim through that popped out into a wall, and that's just been the most extraordinary dive I've ever done. And I can't remember offhand what it's called. It wasn't Aquarium, that was the other one, which was also good. It might just be Half Moon Bay Wall. I'm not sure, but it was extraordinary. And you just came out. I remember there was a school of eagle rays below us, all sorts of big life. It was just gorgeous.
That's the fun thing about diving. It's always something new. You could dive the same spot 100 times, and there's always something new to see.
Yes. There's an author named Trish O'Malley, and she had a bed and breakfast on Bonaire that she lived at, and they had a house reef out there. And I went there and dived that same stretch over and over and over, and you saw completely different things every single time. And I stayed in Bonaire at the Sand Dollar condominium, and they had a house reef, and we started doing afternoon or night dives every single day, and we would find things. It's just the best. If you're watching this and you haven't dived before, do it. It's the best. It's like flying.
It is. Jacques Cousteau said he used to have a dream about flying until he learned to scuba dive, and then the flying dream went away.
That's pretty cool. I did not know that.
Yeah. So, all right, worst narration gig you've ever had without naming names, and what made it rough?
Oh gosh. Nothing is really springing to mind in terms of the worst. So I will instead say I've done a few erotica books that okay, I have a porn name that I use if I agree to do a book and then I find that book is too moist, as I say, then Jim Steele will narrate it rather than Nick Sullivan. So I've done a few erotica books where the biggest problem has been bursting into laughter because the descriptions are just so graphic, and some of the metaphors are so forced. I just they're still fun. That's the thing, and they're not, and it's not bad writing. It's just if I think about things that give me difficulty, it's cracking up at stuff.
Yeah. All right, this is our wrap-up question. At the end of the day, what do you want readers to walk away with after finishing one of your books?
If they're not a diver, I want them to become a diver. If they haven't been to that island, I want them to go to that island.
Very cool. All right. Nick, thanks for jumping on and sharing your story behind the stories. Everything from dive sites to dialogue. If you haven't read the Deep series, do yourself a favor and grab a copy exclusively on Amazon.com. And check out tropicalauthors.com for more sun-soaked, high-stakes thrillers from writers who know the terrain. That's it for this episode of Plot Recon, where thrillers get tactical. I'm Evan Graver. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you next time.